Howdy, it's Jim Arado, and this is October 29th, 2022, and we're at the Lincoln Pioneer Village and Museum in Rockport, Indiana, as you saw from the sign there at the front. And we're just taking a quick stroll through the museum. I'll put up another video about our day at the Pioneer Village part. They were having their kind of end of the season event. Was a fall heritage days, I believe is what they called it, and that's definitely something I'm going to have to put on my calendar from now on. It was a great event. They had a good crowd, and we enjoyed it quite a bit. But yeah, here in the museum, and they've got some great relics. There are a few modern pieces if you look closely, but for the most part, this is a great museum about Abraham Lincoln, the Civil War, Rockport, Indiana, the people of this area. This is just a really nice museum. It's I want to say maybe $4 or $5 to get in. It's not that expensive, and yeah, they've just got this great museum, great pioneer village, and they've got this mural here in the back dedicated to the movie The Kentuckian, put out in 1955. And I've talked a bit about that on other videos. It's a fun movie, of its time, for its time, and it's just an interesting movie. But they filmed a bit of that movie, I believe, here on the property. I know some of the buildings here were used in the movie. And yeah, even in the bathroom here at the museum, there's some blown up postcards that are framed showing scenes from the movie. And that boat was in the Kentuckian, and you can also see it in Gone with the Wind and a couple of other movies. And something else I've mentioned elsewhere is down near Shiloh, Tennessee. If you go check out the battlefield, if you go to Pickwick Landing State Park, which is nearby, if you stay at the lodge, they have, kind of in the little front entrances of the rooms, they have a blown up black and white photo of that same boat docked there at Pickwick Landing. And I think that's really cool. I've check out my video on Pickwick Landing State Park Lodge, and you'll see that. But I think that's great. And as I mentioned, here at the museum, they have several relics with a direct tie or a slightly indirect tie to Lincoln. They've got items that were owned by family and friends. And they do have a few direct Lincoln items, which I think is pretty impressive. In fact, there's a hutch coming up that we're about to see. Oh yeah, well then there's something right there. There's a hutch coming up that according to the signage, was built by Lincoln and his dad. And I want to say around Elizabethtown, there's some mantles over fireplaces that supposedly were built by Lincoln's father. There are a couple of museums I've been to, actually several now that I think about it, that have pieces of furniture built by Lincoln's dad. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I think this might be one of the few items, furniture pieces built by both of them. I love those great signs around the place. You did see, I think, some plates hanging up that were fairly modern. But for the most part, this place has some cool older relics, and I think that's great. Of course, Spencer County, again, very impressive relics. And it's great to come here and see authentic items from our past like that. Yeah, there's the hutch I was talking about that apparently was built by Abe and his father. And just some other great local items. But yeah, so Lincoln, he was born and has spent his first few years here in Kentucky, down near Hodgenville, and there's a couple of National Historic sites relating to Lincoln, in my neck of the woods. And then if you go to Indiana, Santa Claus, Indiana is only about 25 miles from Rockport. And there's the Lincoln Boyhood Home, which is also managed by the National Park Service. and they have kind of a cast of the foundations of the home where he lived at the right spot, and it's kind of set up like a little pioneer village too. And then across the street from that is a Abraham Lincoln State Park, and that one, the national park is free to get into. The state park you've got to pay. It's like, I don't know, $10 a carload or something like that. But both are definitely worth seeing. And here was kind of a little room. They show a film, and they have some just cool items of local interest, and I love that kind of stuff too. Buttons, pictures from the local schools, and they had a film showing over here. And that little model of the house, of I think the Lincoln, Indiana house, if I read the sign correctly, it was made with looked like wood and items found from the property. And I just thought that was pretty neat. Yeah, and they also have a lot of vintage old clothing here. Lots of old dresses. Not a dress person myself, but I think it's interesting that they've got this stuff here for sure. I have put up a couple of other videos about Rockport. There was one where we kind of take a drive through town and talk a little bit about the Lincoln historic markers. Oh yeah, there we go. Abraham Lincoln's powder horn. That's a holy grail item if there is one, for sure. Yeah, this room was really cool. I think those were some bank signs and things like that. And I think those things like that are really cool. Of course, the Pioneer Village here was built in the mid-30s, which, that's a little bit over 60 years after the death of Lincoln, right? I think it was built in the mid-30s, yeah. So 60 years removed from Abraham Lincoln, that's not a lot of time. It's definitely closer to Lincoln's time than our current time. And just something to think about. And Honest Abe spent time here in this area. And that definitely gives this Pioneer Village a little more cred. And, I mentioned that they were having Fall Heritage Days. Good crowd. People doing kind of interpretation, people doing presentations. You'd walk into a house, somebody would tell you a little bit about it. And I'll put, if I haven't already, I'll put up another video as we wandered through the village. But I wanted to mention that I bought a book, The Wrath of Judge Lynch, Race Wars, by John Arnold Hargis. The back of the book mentions that Mr. Hargis practiced law mostly in Rockport for 46 years. And he's written a really interesting book about some racial lynching incidences that occurred in Rockport and Boonville. And it was the kind of thing where everybody knew exactly what happened. But the good old boys kind of turned their backs to justice. A very interesting book. Mr. Hargis sticks to the facts. He doesn't tell you what to think. He kind of says, here's what happened. Here are the facts. And once you read the facts, well, it was 1900. So, and he gets into some of the racial things going on in southern Indiana at that time. It was a state that sided with the Union, but some history, especially in southern Indiana, that was questionable, to say the least. But it's a good book. He was selling copies for $10, and it's just a nice book. And I wanted to mention that real quick if you're interested in Rockport history. And he's obviously written a book about a not so well known subject in that area. I love these cases. I love looking at the old toys and just old Native American relics, things like that. Just a really nice display. Even if you're not fascinated with old toys, dollhouse furniture, things like that, this is just fun to look at. And mention again, this is only 20-25 miles away from Santa Claus, Indiana. You could combine this trip, if you're going to come down to Holiday World with the kids. You've got this great museum in Rockport. You've got the national park and the state park, really right there in Santa Claus, Indiana too. There's a lot of history. Oh yeah, look at that surgeon's kit. Whew. Yeah, anyway, and as you probably know, during the Civil War, a surgeon, a quote surgeon, was pretty much a guy that cut off limbs when somebody was injured and they didn't know what else to do. But yeah, this is back on a happy topic. Yeah, Santa Claus, Indiana is not that far away. Holiday World, which we used to call Santa Claus Land when we were younger, is there. There's the great museum there next to Holiday World also. Oh yeah, some more great Lincoln related relics. Check that out. Yeah, but there's the was it the Santa Claus Indiana Museum, literally right by Holiday World, and it's a small museum that, like this museum, packs a wallop, and it's often overlooked. But yeah, a lot of history in this area. We saw a bank a moment ago. There was a little Lincoln bank. The last time I was in the Springfield, Illinois area, I found one of those banks at an antique store, and I greedily purchased it. Yeah, that one right there. There you go, right there, kind of the left bottom corner. And I actually bought it in New Salem, but it was a bank, little bank that was issued by the Bank of Springfield, Illinois. So I think that's kind of a neat piece. Not uncommon, but just a nice item to have to set on my bookshelf. Lots of Lincoln busts there. I know when I was here, man, 5, 6 years ago, there was a nice young fella running the place, and he looked like Lincoln, and he said he often did, he was the Lincoln impersonator for, acting out the younger Lincoln years. And I thought that was pretty cool. I love the old baseball jerseys. And at the front where you buy your ticket, they do have a few items you can buy. And here's some old souvenirs from years past. I love this kind of stuff too. But they do have a little case where you can buy, I think they had some postcards, some books, and things like that. Oh, and I love old postcards. But then also in the Pioneer Village, they had a gift shop. And I think they had one of those kind of deals where probably local friends of the Pioneer Village had donated books. And, for $1 or $2, you could go through some used books and see if there was anything you needed. So they had a little gift shop out at the Pioneer Village also. More kind of a little model of just some local history there. Another thing, if you watched the video I made about the village and the Heritage Days, we talked to a guy who sounds like him and some other people built rafts and recreated the little journey that Abraham Lincoln took from here to New Orleans, and that was fascinating. I think it's kind of neat that they've done that. Anyway, I just wanted to put up this quick video. If you're into Lincoln, I've got a ton of other Lincoln-related videos on my YouTube channel, and oh yeah, some more local military history. I love that. Lincoln Memorial University down in Tennessee near the Cumberland Gap, they've got a great museum. Hodgenville, Kentucky has more than just the National Park Museum. There's a private museum down there too. Of course, if you go to Springfield, Illinois, that's like Disneyland for Abraham Lincoln fans. Don't forget, if you go to Illinois, hit New Salem. Don't skip out on New Salem. That's a great little town. Lots of Lincoln history. And kind of like Rockport, it's often overlooked. People go to Springfield, they see the main attraction sites, they forget to go to New Salem. People forget to go to Rockport, and you shouldn't. These are top-notch places, and it's often easier to get around at a place like this than at some of the bigger sites. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed that. If you've been here, let me know. Thanks.